Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to picture a scene that plays out in homes literally everywhere. It's evening. A child has been sitting at the kitchen table for 40 grueling minutes, just staring down a single homework problem. They've practically erased a hole straight through the paper. They're frustrated, they're tired, and finally, they arrive at an answer. But they check it, and it's wrong. You can literally feel the frustration in the room.
Now, as a caregiver or a parent watching this frustrating stalemate unfold, your heart just goes out to them, right? You see those tears welling up, and your immediate instinct is to swoop right in and validate that immense struggle. You desperately want to avoid any kind of shaming, and you want them to know that their hard work really matters. So you end up saying the very first thing that comes to mind.
At least you tried really hard. We've all said it. It's such a common phrase, and obviously it comes from a place of deep love. But here is the hard truth. While this gives them some brief emotional comfort in the moment, nobody is actually examining why all that effort didn't lead to progress. Because the strategy itself was never looked at, this well-meaning phrase almost guarantees the exact same grueling 40-minute struggle the very next night. We are essentially rewarding them for banging their head against a brick wall.
Okay, let's dive into this, because we do not have to stay stuck in this exhausting dynamic. In this explainer, we're going to walk through a structured, 5-step path right out of it. We'll cover the problem with praising effort, persistence versus stubborn repetition, 3 questions to ask before you praise, the 5-part feedback plan, and finally, when to pause or pivot.
So, starting with part 1, the problem with praising effort and why just keep trying, simples isn't enough. Look, praising effort became incredibly popular for a really good reason. It's an awesome tool to protect kids from a fixed mindset. You know, that belief that you either have natural ability or you don't. We want to teach them that they can do anything if they try. But this becomes deeply unhelpful and honestly even damaging when it accidentally celebrates pure exhaustion and completely ignores the actual outcome of learning.
Because the reality is, progress requires way more than just blind effort. It needs prior knowledge, effective instruction, an appropriate level of challenge, useful feedback, time, sleep, emotional safety, and access to support. A child might be working incredibly hard, literally pushing themselves to the absolute limit, but what they actually need is a piece of prior knowledge they missed, or maybe a completely different explanation. Heck, maybe they just need more sleep. Praising effort shouldn't mask the reality that sometimes more effort isn't the missing ingredient at all. Sometimes you just need better instruction or an adjusted challenge. Moving to part 2, persistence versus stubborn repetition, or defining the core conflict. This brings us to a really crucial paradigm shift. We have got to cleanly and clearly separate intelligent, thoughtful adjustment from heroic, grinding exhaustion. They are absolutely not the same thing, even if, from the outside, they both look like hard work.
And this brilliantly illustrates that exact difference. Persistence means remaining totally committed to a goal while adjusting your strategies when needed. Stubborn repetition, on the other hand, means continuing the exact same ineffective action without learning anything from the result. Think about a child stubbornly rereading a confusing paragraph 6 times without understanding a single word. That might look like persistence, right? But healthy persistence is slowing down to identify unfamiliar words, summarizing one sentence at a time, or asking a specific question. Our feedback has to direct their effort, not just increase it.
Which leads us to part 3. 3 questions before you praise, to figure out, is this strategy actually working? This right here is the gateway to our solution. Before we automatically praise a child for simply sitting at a desk for an hour, we need to make a few prerequisite checks.
So before you automatically say, wow, you worked so hard, ask yourself these 3 things. Number 1, was the child actually engaged with the task? Sitting at a desk for a long time can sometimes just be avoidance, repeated restarting, or passive waiting. Number 2, did they use or test a strategy? Because effort is only really useful when it's organized around an actual method. And number 3, did they respond to feedback? Did they even notice if their approach was helping them understand? Asking yourself these questions helps you distinguish truly productive effort from an activity that desperately needs a totally different direction.
Okay, part 4, the 5-part feedback plan, also known as the effective effort script. We are moving from abstract philosophy right into a highly concrete step-by-step script. You can literally use this at the kitchen table tonight the second the homework comes out.
Here is exactly how you do it. Step 1. Describe the challenge accurately. Don't pretend it was easy. Say something like, that problem required several steps. Step 2. Identify the strategy. State exactly what they did. You drew a diagram before solving. Step 3.
Connect that strategy to progress. The diagram helped you see which information was missing. Step 4, notice adjustment. This is where you praise that intelligent persistence we talked about. The first method didn't work, so you tried another one. And finally, step 5, decide the next step honestly. Useful feedback always has to end with direction, whether that means more practice, a totally different strategy, or maybe just calling it a night and getting some rest.
And that brings us to part 5, when to pause or pivot, and avoiding the romanticization of suffering. We really have to address the nuanced reality here that serious, highly structured effort can still fail. And when it does, we need to know how to respectfully investigate the root cause without ever blaming the child, and super importantly, without romanticizing their suffering.
So the crucial point is knowing exactly when to call a timeout. A pause or complete strategy change is absolutely needed when a child is just repeating the same error over and over, when instructions remain unclear, or when you see their distress rising sharply. If fatigue is actively reducing their accuracy or they clearly lack the background knowledge for the task, pushing harder is entirely useless. We have to remember that pausing isn't avoidance. It creates the necessary space to rest, to get better instruction, or to come back tomorrow with a totally different method.
Just think about a phrase like, "You worked until midnight. I am proud of your dedication." Please, whatever you do, do not say this. It is a prime example of romanticizing unnecessary suffering. Children should not be learning that the most exhausted person in the room is the most worthy. Long hours, skipped sleep, and tears usually just point to poor planning, an excessive workload, or a highly ineffective strategy.
Instead, try saying something like this. You stayed committed, but this schedule is not sustainable. We need a better plan. Now, that is a beautifully responsible, reframed response. It fully acknowledges their hard work and their dedication, but it firmly protects their health. It establishes that effective learning requires recovery and strategy, not just endless, punishing grinding.
All right, part 6, the 7-day effort audit, which is your homework assignment. Rather than just leaving you with some vague well wishes today, I want to challenge you with a specific, measurable assignment of your own. It's time to take a hard look at how we, as adults, are praising the learners in our own lives. Over the next week, I want you to try this empowering experiment. For days 1 and 2, just notice and record the praise you naturally give out. No judgment, just observe. Then, days 3 and 4, categorize what the child was actually doing when you praised them. Was it just time spent sitting there, or were they actively using a strategy? On days 5 and 6, ask yourself those tough audit questions, like, did I just praise a long duration without checking if they were actually engaged? And finally, on day 7, I want you to replace an empty phrase like, you worked hard, with educationally useful encouragement. Try something like, you returned to the instructions, you found the missing step, and you corrected the answer. It is a total game changer. Before we wrap up, I want to share a really vital reminder. Effort should never, ever be used to explain away unmet support needs. If a child is putting in persistent, serious effort and they are still facing significant difficulty, just telling them to try harder is actually damaging. When you see substantial, visible effort that still results in failure, that might be a major signal. It might mean you need to communicate with their teachers, review the quality of the instruction they're getting, or even seek out support from a qualified educational or healthcare professional.
I want to leave you all with this final provocative thought. The very next time you see a learner struggling at that kitchen table, ask yourself, are you rewarding exhaustion or are you guiding intelligent persistence? Remember, healthy persistence is not endless repetition. It is commitment that is guided by information. Let's help our learners become thoughtful, flexible, and truly independent. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.